The woman standing at the front desk of the Grand Alcott Hotel had on a coat that had seen better days. A beige wool blend with a fraying left cuff, the kind of coat you hold onto, not because you can't afford a new one, but because it belonged to someone you love. Her name was Wilhelmina Cross, though most people who mattered to her had called her Willie since she was 4 years old. She was 63. She carried a single rolling suitcase, navy blue, worn at the corners, and she pulled it behind her with the unhurried steadiness of a woman who had learned long ago that rushing never got you anywhere worth going. The lobby of the Grand Alcott was the kind of place that made certain people feel welcome and certain people feel watched. Crystal chandeliers hung from a ceiling that arched 40 feet above the marble floor. The air smelled of orchids and something faintly citrus, piped in deliberately, engineered to make guests feel like they had arrived somewhere important. Behind the front desk, 3 clerks in burgundy blazers attended to guests with practiced smiles that never quite reached their eyes. Willie approached the desk and set her purse on the counter. "Good afternoon," she said. The clerk who looked up at her, a young man, early 20s, with a name tag that read Stewart, took one look at her coat, her suitcase, her silver locks pulled back with a simple wooden clip, and something in his expression shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. The kind of shift that people like Willie had been reading their entire lives. "Can I help you?" Stewart said. Not "welcome to the Grand Alcott," not "good afternoon." Just, "Can I help you?" In the voice you use when what you mean is, "What are you doing here?" "I have a reservation," Willie said. She opened her purse and set her ID on the counter. Stewart looked at it, looked at her, typed something, looked at his screen. "I'm not seeing anything under that name," he said. "It's under Wilhelmina Cross, Wilhelmina. More typing. A pause that lasted just a beat too long. "I'm sorry, we don't seem to have a reservation matching that." Willie tilted her head slightly. "Could you try the corporate account? It may have been booked through Alcott Group Holdings."
Stewart's fingers
slowed on the keyboard. "Ma'am, are you saying you're with the Alcott Group?" "I'm saying the reservation may have been made through that account," she said, patient as morning. He typed again. His colleague, a young woman named Dana, glanced over from 2 stations down, read the moment, and looked away. "I'm going to have to ask you to step aside while I check with my manager," Stewart said. "We have other guests to attend to." Willie looked behind her. There was no one in line. She stepped aside. She stood near the edge of the desk and waited. She rested both hands on the handle of her suitcase. Outside, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the circular driveway where a valet was rushing to open the door of a black town car. She watched the whole performance without expression. Not angry, not resigned, just watching, the way you watch weather you've seen before. The manager came out from a back office. His name tag said Philip Horn, Guest Experience Manager. He was perhaps 40 trim, with a kind of officious energy that he wore like a second blazer. He walked toward Willie with the carefully measured pace of someone who had been trained to project authority without inviting conflict. "Ma'am," he said, not smiling. "I understand there's been some confusion about a reservation." "There's no confusion on my end," Willie said pleasantly. "I made a reservation 3 weeks ago, Suite 1114, 2 nights. Philip glanced at the screen Stewart had pulled up. "I don't see it here. You might try checking under Alcott Group Holdings." Something flickered across his face. "And what is your relationship to the Alcott Group?" Willie looked at him for a moment. "Could you just check the account?" she said. "Ma'am, the Alcott Group has a corporate account with us, but access to those bookings is reserved for." He paused, choosing his words. "For verified personnel." "I understand. So I'm going to need to ask, in what capacity are you affiliated?" She didn't answer right away. She opened her purse again, slowly, and retrieved a business card. She set it on the counter between them. Philip looked at it. He didn't pick it up right away. He read it where it sat, and something in the muscles around his jaw changed. The card said, "Wilhelmina Cross, Chief Executive Officer, Alcott Group Holdings." He picked it up. "Read it again." He started. "Suite 1114, Willie said. I'd like to check in now, please. Let me tell you something about Wilhelmina Cross that the hotel lobby did not know and did not bother to ask. She had grown up in Birmingham, Alabama, the fifth of 6 children, in a house where the hot water was unreliable and the kitchen table had one leg held up by a folded encyclopedia. Her father worked 2 jobs and still came home singing on Fridays, which she had thought, as a child, was the most extraordinary thing in the world. Her mother pressed clothes for other people's households, and somehow, from that income and her husband's wages and the particular ferocity of her will, put all 6 children through school. Willie got a scholarship to study business at a state university where she was one of 11 black students in her entering class. She graduated with honors. She took a job at a hotel management company that no longer exists and spent 11 years learning everything there was to know about how hospitality worked, how buildings stayed standing, how people were treated, and why. She left that company and joined a small investment group that was quietly acquiring undervalued hotel properties across the Southeast. She ran operations. Then she ran strategy. Then she ran the company. 40 years later, the Alcott Group Holdings owned 27 hotels in 14 states. The Grand Alcott Birmingham, the one with the crystal chandeliers and the engineered citrus air, was the one she had named for her mother. She had been coming back to this particular property twice a year, every year, for 20 years. Not always staying the night, sometimes just walking the lobby, checking the corners, watching how the staff spoke to guests. It was the habit of a woman who understood that the only way to know what was really happening inside a building was to walk into it looking like nobody. She had never told the front desk staff who she was. Until today. Philip Horn was still holding the card. His face had gone through several phases in the span of about 10 seconds, and none of them were dignified. First, skepticism. Then, uncertainty. Then, as he looked more carefully at the card and connected it to something in his memory. A photograph, perhaps, from a company-wide communication, or a name he had seen in internal documents. Something closer to the particular horror of a man watching the floor open beneath him. "Mrs. Cross," he said. Please accept my sincerest apologies. I don't know how the reservation wasn't." "It was there," Willie said simply. "It just wasn't looked for very hard." He set the card down, picked up the desk phone, said something in a low voice to whoever answered. Hung up. "We'll have you checked in immediately, and I'll personally ensure that Suite 1114 is prepared too." "It should already be prepared," she said. "Check-in was at 3. It's 4:15, of course." "Yes, absolutely." He looked at Stewart, who had gone the color of old paper. "Stewart, please process Miss Cross's check-in right away." Stewart's hands moved on the keyboard with a different quality than before, faster, more careful. Dana, at the far station, was looking at her screen with great concentration, though she had not typed anything in 2 minutes. Willie waited. She did not make it easy, not out of cruelty. That was never her way, but because she had stood in this lobby many times, and she had watched how people were treated, and she had spent 40 years believing that how you respond to a moment like this matters. That shrinking away from it doesn't serve anyone. That accountability, when it comes, should arrive fully. The key card was printed. A bellman materialized, faster than bellmen usually materialize, and reached for her suitcase. "I've got it," she said. He nodded and pressed the elevator button for her instead. Suite 1114 looked out over the city. The Birmingham skyline at dusk had a particular color. A soft amber that settled over the buildings like something remembered. And Willie stood at the window for a long time after she set her suitcase down. She had grown up 20 minutes from here, in a neighborhood that people from this part of town did not visit. Her mother had ironed shirts for people who stayed in hotels like this one. Willie herself had not been inside a hotel like this until she was 26 years old, at a work conference, and she had stood in the lobby then, with her badge clipped to her lapel, and still felt the particular weight of being watched. She pulled out her phone. There was a text from her deputy, a sharp young woman named Tara, who handled communications for the group. "Everything okay?" Heard you're in Birmingham. Willie typed back, fine. Doing a walkthrough. Then she sat in the chair by the window and called her daughter. Her daughter was 41 and lived in Atlanta with her husband and 2 kids, and when she answered she said, Mama, did something happen? Because she knew her mother well enough to know that a call on a Tuesday afternoon usually meant something. Nothing bad, Willie said. I just wanted to hear your voice. She didn't tell her daughter about the front desk. She didn't tell anyone that day. She ordered room service, the catfish, because the Grand Alcott Birmingham had always done it right. Butter seared with a remoulade that tasted like something her own mother might have made on a good Sunday, and she ate it by the window while the city went dark outside. The next morning she came down to breakfast at 7:30. The restaurant was half full. She was shown to a table by the window, and she ordered coffee and eggs, and opened the notebook she carried everywhere. A brown leather thing, held together with a rubber band, the pages soft with use. She was writing when Philip Horn appeared at the edge of the dining room. He saw her and hesitated, the way a man hesitates when he is deciding whether he can pretend he hasn't seen someone. Then he came toward her table. Messrs. Cross. Good morning. I hope the suite was satisfactory. It was fine, she said. Thank you. He stood there. She could see he had something he wanted to say and wasn't sure how to say it. Please, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. He sat, smoothed his tie, looked at his hands briefly. I want to apologize again for yesterday, he said. What happened at the front desk, it was completely unacceptable. I've spoken to the staff involved. Have you? Yes. I want you to know that the Grand Alcott takes its commitment to every guest seriously, regardless of. He paused, regardless of anything. Willie looked at him. He was not a bad man, she thought. He was a man who had built habits, and those habits had been built on assumptions, and the assumptions had never been examined, because no one had ever required him to examine them. That was its own kind of problem, not malice, something quieter, something that ran deeper and was in some ways harder to fix. Philip, she said, how long have you been at this property? 6 years, he said. And in those 6 years, how many guests have you personally come out from the back office to question about their reservation? A pause. I can't say exactly, roughly. He looked at the window. It's not a common occurrence. But it happened yesterday. He didn't answer. I'm not asking to make you feel worse than you already feel, she said, and she meant it. I'm asking because I've been walking into lobbies for 40 years, and I can tell you exactly how it feels to stand at a front desk and have someone decide before you open your mouth what kind of guest you are. And I can also tell you that the people on your staff who do that, they don't think they're doing anything wrong. That's the part that matters. He nodded slowly. I want to do a staff training review, she said. Not a punishment exercise, a real conversation with everyone on the floor about what happened and why. I'll participate if you're willing to facilitate it. He looked up. You'd be willing to do that? I've been doing this a long time, Willie said. I didn't build 27 hotels by throwing people away when they made mistakes. I built them by making sure the mistakes meant something. She spent the afternoon in meetings with the property's general manager, a woman named Val, who had been running the Grand Alcott for 3 years, and who Willie respected enormously. Val had seen the incident report Philip filed and had already begun her own review. When Willie walked into the conference room, Val stood up from her chair and said, Willie, I am so sorry. Don't be sorry, Willie said. Be useful. They worked for 4 hours. They went through guest complaint records, exit surveys, staff scheduling notes. They looked at patterns. They identified 2 other incidents in the past 18 months that had been logged as routine complaints, but that, on review, pointed toward the same thing. A pattern of differential treatment at the front desk that nobody had named yet because nobody had looked at them together. Val sat back at one point and rubbed her face. I should have seen this. You saw it now, Willie said. Because you walked into your own lobby and got questioned like a... Val stopped. Like a woman in a worn coat, Willie finished. Without heat. Val shook her head. I want to know something, Willie said. When you walk through the lobby in the morning, and I know you do, because you told me your first year that you walk the floor every day before the breakfast rush. What do you see? Val thought about it. I see if the floors are clean, if the front desk is staffed, if the floral arrangements are fresh. What don't you see? A long pause. Who gets greeted first? Val said quietly. Who has to wait longer? Who gets asked for ID when nobody else does? That's what I want you to start seeing, Willie said. Stuart was 22 years old. He had grown up in Hoover, a suburb south of Birmingham, and he had gotten this job through a hotel management program at a community college. He liked the work, mostly. He was good at the parts that involved problem solving and logistics. He was less good at the parts that involved people who didn't match the template he had been given, without being aware that he had been given one. When Val called him into her office that afternoon, his first feeling was fear. His second feeling, after Val explained what the meeting was actually about, was something more complicated. A kind of sick recognizing, the sensation of seeing something you had done and not being able to claim you hadn't meant to do it. I didn't think about it that way, he said. She didn't look like. He stopped. Like what? Val said. He couldn't finish the sentence, not because he didn't know the answer, but because saying it out loud made it real, and making it real meant sitting with what it meant about him. That's the conversation we need to have, Val said. Not just you, all of us. The staff session happened the next morning before the hotel opened for breakfast. 18 people sat in the ballroom with cups of coffee, and the kind of unease that comes when everyone knows they are gathered to talk about something true. Willie sat at the table, not at the head of it. She had asked for it that way. She did not tell them who she was at first. She told them what had happened. She described it the way you describe something you witnessed. This woman walked in. This is what she said. This is how she was received. This is how long she waited. This is what she was asked to prove. Then she told them the rest. The room was very quiet. A woman near the back, one of the housekeeping supervisors, who had been with the Grand Alcott for 11 years, raised her hand. What do you want from us? She said, not hostile, genuinely asking. I want you to understand something, Willie said. Respect is not something you extend to people after you've determined they've earned it. It's something you extend first, before you know who they are, before you know what they own, or what they manage, or what's on their business card. You extend it because that's who you've decided to be, not because of what they can prove to you. She paused. Somewhere along the way, we got that backwards. And when we get it backwards, some people pay a cost that other people never even notice. I've been paying that cost my whole life. A lot of people in this room have been paying it, and a lot of people in this room have been charging it. Not out of hate, not out of anything deliberate, just out of habit, just out of assumption. She looked around the table. Habits can change. That's the only thing I know for certain about human beings. We can change what we practice. Stuart was sitting 3 seats to her left. He had not looked up from the table in 10 minutes. After the session ended and people were filing out, he came and stood near her. Miss Cross, he said. She waited. He stopped, started again. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix it. No, she said. It doesn't. She looked at him. But it's a beginning. What you do with it from here, that's what matters. He nodded. His eyes were red at the corners. She picked up her notebook and her coffee cup and walked out of the ballroom into the lobby, which was beginning to fill with the morning's first guests. And she stood for a moment and watched it. The light through the tall windows, the sound of the fountain near the entrance, a family with 2 small children who were arguing about something with the particular intensity that only children can sustain. And she felt what she always felt in this lobby. Her mother, somewhere in the walls of it. She checked out at noon. Val walked her to the door. Same time next spring? Val said. Same time next spring, Willie said. The valet brought her rental car around. She put her suitcase in the trunk herself, because she had always preferred to handle her own things. She got in the car and sat for a moment with the engine running, looking at the front of the building. The carved stone letters above the entrance that spelled out Alcott in the same font she had chosen 20 years ago. She had not named it for herself. She had named it for her mother, Alcott being the street her mother had grown up on. A narrow block in a part of the city that had since been rezoned and redeveloped, and now bore no resemblance to what it had been. But the name was still here. That much, at least. She put the car in drive. The road out of downtown took her past the neighborhood where she had grown up. She didn't drive through it, but she could feel it the way you feel something close to you in the dark. Not visible, but present, pulling at something below your ribs. She thought about her mother ironing other people's shirts. She thought about her father singing on Fridays. She thought about the lobby of the first hotel she had ever walked into for work, and the way her badge had not been enough to stop the particular kind of watching that she still recognized. All these years later, when it happened, she thought about Stuart's face when he said, "I'm sorry." She hoped it stuck. She hoped it changed something in him that lasted past the embarrassment. She had seen it go both ways over the years. People who were confronted with their assumptions and let it open them. And people who let the shame harden into resentment. She couldn't control which way it went. All she could do was tell the truth about what she had experienced, and then let the person decide what to do with it. That was the part no one talked about. The part after the accountability. The long, quiet, unglamorous work of deciding every day who you were going to be. I'll be honest with you. When I first heard what happened at the front desk of the Grand Alcott Birmingham, my first feeling was anger. The specific, bone-deep anger that comes from recognizing something you felt yourself. That moment when someone looks at you and decides who you are before you've said a word. When they calculate your worth from the hem of your coat, or the silver in your hair, or the color of your skin. But here's what stayed with me. Willie Cross didn't walk into that hotel lobby looking to prove anything. She wasn't carrying her credentials like a shield. She was just a woman in a worn coat, checking into a room she had every right to be in. And when the moment came, when the full weight of who she was landed on that front desk, she didn't use it to humiliate anyone. She used it to teach. That's not weakness. That's something much harder. That's a woman who has lived long enough to know that the point was never just to win the moment. The point was to change what came after it. Respect isn't something you earn by showing people your business card. It's something every human being is owed from the first second they walk through your door. We forget that. We get busy. We get comfortable. We stop looking at who's being made to wait and who isn't. Wilhelmina Cross has been walking into lobbies for 40 years. She has been watching what happens in them. Not just to herself, but to every person who comes in carrying something the room doesn't immediately recognize as valuable. She built 27 hotels. She named the first one for her mother. Think about that. The next time you're tempted to judge what someone can afford, before they've told you a word about their life,